Hey guys, my name is Vlad and welcome to Authentications with NestJs. Authentications is quite a complex subject, but I'm going to try to boil it down so you guys can use it in your own project straight away. Before we start, leave a like and subscribe to this channel. That will help me to make more of those videos in the future. I also have a Substack newsletter that you can subscribe to. It's completely free. I will post interesting content online. You can react to that content. We can have a conversation. So this is going to be fun. And let's get started with authentication with NestJs. Okay, here we go. I have a starter project here and all the source code. You can find it on GitHub in the link in the description below as usual. So the format of this video will be a bit longer because honestly, authentications is quite a big thing, you know. You might think that it's a simple thing, oh come on, how complex could it be? Just log in, right? Log in, sign up, but it's quite complex. It's quite complex and it can really screw you up a lot if you don't know how it's working. Plus some parts of it are quite, I think, confusing, especially the part with passport.js, but we are going to view that in details and see how it works. Okay, so we have a starter app here. I don't need the app controller, I can delete it. Okay, so what we're going to do is that we are going to have a part of the app that will be protected, like you need to log in to access it first, and the other part of the app which will handle basically the authentications. So usually you have authentications and authorizations. Authentication is when you log in, sign up, you basically say who you are, I'm that user, and the server gives you something in return. This can be a session, this can be a Jwt, Json Web Tokens. In this video we are going to use Json Web Tokens because honestly sessions are very hard to scale. They are better if you want to really track the user more aggressively, like if he disconnects, if he is offline for a while, but most of the time a JSON Web Token will be okay. Obviously JSON Web Token comes with its quirks, but hopefully after that video it's going to be clearer for you. So usually people talk about authentications and authorizations. They are very related but a bit different. In this video we are going to focus on authentications, not really authorizations, but they are kind of the same part of the thing, because when you're going to create an account or sign in, the server will give you something in return, like a session or a Jwt, a JSON Web Token, and that information will be useful to say later to the server who you are. So you kind of authentify yourself, right? I am Vlad, I am user with ID 11, and you can trust me because it's proven in the Jwt or in the session. So this is authentication. Authorization, you would usually use it when you have a complex app with a lot of users, a lot of permissions. So you have admins, you have owners, you have users, you have the various stuff, and it's an easier way to push a lot of logic out of your service. So you could put those into like authorization guards and stuff like that. We're not going to use that because honestly most of the time you can do without, and it's really useful when you have a big app. So in this video we're going to focus on authorization. That's 99% of the cases. This is what you need. You basically need to sign in the user or sign up the user, get a JSON Web Token, get a refresh token, and then you kind of need to access some APIs with that data, with the JSON Web Token, with something that the server gave you when you authentified. So this is what we're going to use. So now we're going to create a module. I'm going to use the Nest CLI. So Nest, G module, and auth. I also need a service, and I don't want to have specs, so no test file. And that's about it for now. So we have the auth module, we have the auth service, and the auth module is imported into the app module. Okay, actually we also need to have a controller, which is fine. We're going to create it here, auth.controller.js, export class auth.controller, and it will be a controller. Okay, and the controller will have to import the auth service, private auth service. Okay, and of course the module needs to import that controller as well. Okay, very well. In the controller, we will have two routes. We will have a sign in and a sign up route. So post sign in local. Why local? Because you can sign in with an email and a password. You can also sign in with a social authentication like Google or Facebook or LinkedIn, and you would need to create different route for those. We're not going to cover those in this video, and we can cover those. If you want me to cover those, just leave a comment in the comment box below. But for now, it will be just local authentication. So sign in local, then sign up local. And I need to import all the stuff. Okay, very well. And here we just need to define those functions here. And I like to use the same name actually. Write and sign up local. Here we go. That's one thing. And the server will call the controller will call the functions in the service, sign in local and sign up local here. Okay, that's going to be it. I don't want to deal with the database right now because that will make the video really long. So in our case, we're going to just create a JSON with users. And let's put it here, users.json, and it will be an array of a user ID, one, email, vlad@gmail.com, and password 1, 2, 3. And in this case it will be a plain text. Of course, if you are going to store passwords of users somewhere in a database or whatever, don't store them in plain text. I think it's common knowledge. You need to use bcrypt or something like that to hash them. But since we're just testing here, that's fine. And we're going to need to import those users.json. I think that TS config will complain. So we need to add something about JSON, resolve Json module to true. Yeah, so that way we'll be able to import the JSON, and in the auth service, I'm just going to, actually it's open here, I'm just going to import that file. So users from users.json. And I think that worked. Okay, so now we have our kind of a database. It's just a file with users. And now we're going to use passport. What is passport? Passport is a authentication library. Basically, it allows you to authentify users more easily. So in the documentation, they use passport for local authentications. But to be honest, I think it's much easier to just do that in our own services. Jwt, no worries, yeah, I do agree. But local authentications, you're not going to use it anywhere else apart from one route, right? Because there are some APIs that are protected with a keyword and passport and email pair. So every time you do a call to the API, you need to provide passport need to provide password and email. But most of the APIs, it's not how it works, and anyway you'll have a API token or something. So the only place where you would need to use the password local authentication is basically when you sign up and when you sign in, and that's it. You're not going to use it anywhere. So there's no point for us to bring that kind of complexity and add passport local for that. We will use passport Jwt because that we're going to use a lot in our app. We can protect a lot of endpoints with Jwt, but not in the case of local password. So in that case, we're not going to use passport local. We're just going to code the local logic ourselves, but we're going to use passport Jwt a bit later. And there's a lot of concepts here. I will try to explain them as they arise. So once we have implemented the authentication, the local one at least, I'm going to use passport, and I'm going to talk a bit about Jwt and stuff like that. So let's get started here. Let's create the login route, right? So what do we need for login? When we are logging in, we need to provide an email and a password. So we find a user by email, and if we found it, we compare the passwords, and if the passwords match, you have proven that you are that user, so I need to give you something in return so you can use that later, and that will be the Jwt. For now, let's do it simple. So the sign-in local route will receive a body with the email and a password. We just need to change the route so it's out, right? So it's going to be controller out, and it will be local sign in, and that is going to be local sign up, right? So once we'll call auth/local/sign in, we need to provide the email and the password. So for that, we're going to use DTOs. If you don't know what a DTO is, it's a data transfer object. I have already made a video on the subject. You can check it with the link that appears. So let's create a folder called DTO. I'm going to use a baran export. So just export all the code from my index.ts and put all the code separate by file. So in that case, it will be auth.dto.ts. So export class auth.dto, and we'll have email string and a password string. So we basically have an auth.dto. We can export it from the DTO folder. Okay, that is done, and we can import it in the controller. Body DTO auth.dto, and we pass it to our logic DTO like that. And we also can do that with the sign up route, because basically when we are signing in, we provide the email and the password, and when we are signing up, we also provide the email and password. So we can just put it here, import the body here, and in the service we also need to provide the DTO auth.dto. That's a nice thing about TypeScript, guys. Like, if you have to do it in JavaScript, it will be a nightmare. Okay, so we have the users. Now, when we're signing in, we first need to retrieve the user, and then we need to compare the password. So let's do the logic for retrieving the user. So retrieve user. So it will be const user is equal users find. Users is an array, so we can use find function on it. User dot email. Oh, amazing! It even recognizes it. Is equal to. Let me move that a bit here. DTO.email. Okay, so we found the user with the same email. So obviously, if the user does not exist, if not user. So if you provide an email that is not in the database, we throw an exception, new. It will be unauthorized exception, user does not exist, something like that. And if the user exists, then we will compare the password. If user the password is equal to DTO.password, password. Actually, if it's not equal, then we are going to also throw that. And usually when you're going to show errors, it's better to not show those kind of errors. So because if someone attacks your database, they'll be able to bombard you with requests and try to guess if at least you have that user in the database. So usually I like to just say credentials incorrect. So in that case, the attacker does not know if the password was incorrect or if the user is at least in the database. He does not know. So, and by the way, putting it like that, the errors first, I think it's called if guard conditions. It allows us to not use a lot of code, because basically we don't need to put else's and stuff like that. So we just put errors first, and then if it's correct, for now, let's just return the user. So if you have provided the right user email and if you have provided the right user password, we return the user. Okay, and let's try that API. I'm going to use Insomnia here. Okay, so you have auth local, and it was sign in, right? Right. Okay, so we have a body. Let's actually put a URL encoded. So we have email, vlad@gmail.com, and password. It was 123. And we couldn't connect to server because we haven't started the server. So let's start the server first. VM run start dev. Guys, I'm going very slow here, and maybe I'm explaining something that you already know, because that's some basic stuff, but I will continue going and adding more stuff, so it's going to be a bit more complex. So if you feel like you know that, don't hesitate to drop a bit in the future, like just go a bit further in the video and just grab what you want, and I'll be happy if you can do that. So I just don't want to bore you in case you know what's happening here. Okay, we have a error. Let's say why. It's probably something to have with my Json thing. Can't read property find. Okay, I think I know why it's happening. So basically, I don't know why, but imports are not working very well for Json. So I'm going to use a require users require users.json. Okay, I think that's fine. And I'm just going to is lint, disable next line. Don't give me that error. That's fine. Okay, let's try it again. And now it works. So we have used that login route, right? We have provided the email and the password, and we have some logic here to basically log in the user. And if we don't provide the password, we have provided a wrong password, it will be credential incorrect. And if we have provided a bad email, to also tell us credentials incorrect, right? Here we go. So that's the basic thing. Right now we are returning the user, but obviously we don't want to return the user. We need to return something that will represent the user, but not the user. and that's going to be a JWT, a JSON Web Token. So what are JSON Web Tokens? So let's go to jsonwebtoken.io, and it's a very nice page where they have an example of a JWT with some encodings. Basically, it's a very long string of characters, very long text that is made of 3 parts. First of all, we have the signing algorithm used. You can have different JWTs. This one, you can see what's inside. Some JWTs, you cannot see what's inside, but that's fine. You have the algorithm used, that's the first part. Then you have the data, the payload. So that's basically whatever you want to put there. So you can put, for instance, a sub, which will be an ID in your database of that user, or maybe a unique ID, UUID, if you don't want to put a ID in the database. It can be a name of the user. I usually just put sub, like expiration of the token and creation of the token, and an email. That's what I put. You can also put a claim, or I think it's how it's called, basically a permission. And this is what you are going to use for authorizations, not authentications, but more on that later. So it's just a big chunk of text, and that's the JWT. Then on every request, we are going to send the JWT back to the server. The server will decrypt it with passport, and this is why passport is useful. Passport is going to automatically take that from the header and decrypt it and do something with that, right? It will probably connect to the database and do some stuff, like check if that user exists, for instance, or if we don't really need to check for password. We just need to check if that user exists, because this JWT is signed by the server, and this is the like the last part of the JWT. So we know that this JWT has been signed by the server, so we can trust it, right? We don't need to verify the veracity of what's inside it in a way. So a lot of words. Let's go to code and let's see what we can do. Okay, so now instead of sending back the user object, we need to send back the JWT, something that we can use later to do other stuff with the server. And for that, we need to use the Jwt library of NestJs, and let me check where it is. You see, programmers, we don't ever know by heart what's inside the app, like all the libraries. I always have like this screen here where I have some documentation always open, or some Google, right? Okay, here we go. Jwt, passport Jwt, and the types. Perfect, that's what I need. I will kill the server, install that, and I'll also install the types because we use TypeScript. Okay, perfect. In this video, I'm not going to use a refresh token. I'm going to put that in another video because that takes quite some time. In this video, we are just going to give the user a access token. So what's the difference? Well, I actually had to do some research, and it was quite confusing. A lot of people were saying different things, and people were saying use refresh tokens and because of security, but they were not able to really explain why. So how it works is that and I checked that with a friend who works at a large e-commerce company, and that's how they use it. So when you sign in or sign up, well, as usual, we check if the credentials are correct, then we sign this object. So we're going to probably sign the ID and the email. So we're going to put that information in the Jwt, and that's the access token. And additionally, we also create another token, which is the refresh token. So you have two tokens, and then we send them back to you. except that the access token expires in like 15 minutes and the refresh token expires in a week, right? So what is happening is that every 15 minutes, like every 14 minutes, like something like that, every 14 minutes, the client, so the browser, makes a request to the server to receive a new pair of those refresh token plus access token based on the access token, and it also saves based on the refresh token, and it also saves the refresh token in the database. So it's actually very complex and takes a lot of time to actually understand. That's why I try to put it out of this video. I'll put it in other videos like specified, specially made for refresh tokens and how to implement them. But basically refresh tokens are there to log out the user after a long period of inactivity. So access tokens are short-lived, something like 15 minutes. And if you haven't logged in for like 2 days, that's fine, that's cool. You can still, the server can still give you a new access token based on your refresh token. But if you have like been a while for like super long time, right? Then the refresh token will not be valid anymore and you'll be logged out. And basically in your app, if you're using React or something like that, because you're using Jwt, you will need to create a logic that every like 14 minutes or so, like 1 minute less than the expiration of the access token, makes a request to the server and tries to get a new access token and access token and a refresh token pair. So as I've said, it's quite complex and I don't want to bore you with that, so that for the next video. Right now we're going to import the Jwt library. Thankfully, NestJs has already wrapped the Jwt inside a module that we can use actually. So let me clean here a bit because I have a lot of code and I made my screen size big on purpose, so you guys can see everything I do. Imports and Jwt module for weird. Why is not working? Oh, register. It's register. Okay. So since we need to sign the Jwt, we need a password, like we need a secret. So we're going to provide that. Right now it's going to be hard-coded. Obviously, you are going to use it from environment variables first, something like that. So you are going to use register async. This function is documented in the documentation of NestJs if you need. But we're going to use secret and it's going to be super secret cat, whatever. And so this is just to inject the Jwt logic, the Jwt library wrapped as a module inside our app. You can very well use Jwt directly if you want. It has a decode function and sign function, but it's all taken care of for us here. So we go back to auth.service and we are going to create a function called sign user, and also we need to create a constructor where we need to actually import, like inject that Jwt module that has been already imported, and it's going to be private Jwt service that's it. And then we pass well, what are we going to sign? We're going to sign the ID, the email, and maybe the type, so that way you can kind of play around with permissions. So user ID, it will be a number, email, which will be a string, and a type, which will be a string. Later on you can create an enum enumeration, so it's not a string but an enum, but for now let's leave it a string, and it's going to do return this Jwt service sign, and all those functions actually come from the Jwt library, by the way. Sign, and we sign an object, user ID, and it will be sub user ID, email, and I think it's claim or something, whatever. Let's put claim. Yeah. To be honest, I never used in my whole career, like I never used RBAC, role-based authorizations. So don't quote me on that, but let's do that. And here, instead of returning the user, we return this sign user.id, user.email, and user. Okay, so let's run the server. It's a bit slow because the CPU is really taking a hit. Okay, it's running, and let's do the same request again. And yeah, of course, the email is not correct. And what we get back is a Jwt, so we can put that here. And we see that we have sub1 flat at Gmail and claim user. Actually, let's just put type user, right? Ta-da-da, invalid signature. Type user. Okay, so very well. Now, what we can do is that we can, to be honest, at that point we don't need to sign up the user. Like, I'm pretty sure that you guys know how to create a user in your database, so I'm just going to maybe leave that out so we don't waste more time on something that you already know anyway. So we can log in a user and we get a Jwt, right? Now we can have protected routes that you can only access with Jwt, and those routes will be in auth controller. Sorry, not in app controller. It will be a get hello, it will send you hello, but it will be protected. So this is where passport comes into This is where passport comes into play. Passport will act as a guard, so it will block the request if the Jwt is incorrect. So either it is expired or either it has been signed, like the signature is not correct. It will verify with the signature, with our signature super secret cat. It will verify if the Jwt has been signed by our secret correctly. And if it has been, that means that it comes from our server. Obviously, if this is like revealed, you're doomed. Like, your server is not secure and it's over for you. But if it's secure, everything is well, we can trust the server. So we can write that logic by ourselves, you know. Since we have access to the Jwt module, we can use the decode function and do all the checks, but passport does it for us. So let's go ahead and implement passport. And passport works with strategies. So you have different strategies. For instance, I don't know, if you use Google, they have a Google strategy. Here we just need one simple strategy called Jwt, passport Jwt. This is what we're going to use. And I think that we also already installed that. Yeah, we installed that here. So we can use that in our code. Let's create another folder here. We'll put it strategy, and we do Jwt, the strategy.ts, and it will be a provider export class Jwt strategy. It's a injectable, I think, and let's close that. We don't need that anymore. and it needs to extend the password, so we need to import passport Jwt strategy extends strategy, right? Actually, I'm a bit confused. Let me check the documentation because I forgot. Yeah, I forgot how to do it. So passport strategy, so that comes from Nest passport. Okay, and okay, got it. So we also need to have import from NestJs. Oh, we didn't import NestJs passport. Incredible. npm e NestJs passport. We also need NestJs passport, or we didn't. Don't remember now. Okay, passport strategy, and we just import that here. Okay, and here you can name it as you want. Like by default, I think it will be Jwt. You can name it Jwt 2, 3, 4, or whatever you want. So I'll leave Jwt because I like when the code is imperative. So basically when I know what is happening there. If it's too much magic, I'm not very happy. So let's just, since we're there, let's just copy the code here. Okay. Okay, what do we have here? So that means that we are going to extract the Jwt from headers, and it's a bearer token. So it's just that you put bearer and then you put the Jwt in just a format, and let's import all the missing things. And here is the ignore expiration to false. So that means that we just don't want to ignore expiration. If the token expired, normally it's like 15 minutes, then it will throw an error. But in development, you might want to ignore the expiration so you don't mess with it. Like, it doesn't mess with your code, and you can test your logic for a long time and stuff like that. But in production, of course, you should put that to false, and the secret is the same that we used in the Jwt module. So basically, with the module, we sign a Jwt token, right? We sign it, and then the code, every time you give one, it will verify that the data has been signed with that secret. Usually here, you also have a validate function. So it will take so we pass the Jwt, that thing. This code will take that Jwt from the header, it will decode it, and it will put that in a variable called payload. So payload will actually have a sub, email, type, and issue, and should also have expiration date. And with that, you can do something like, usually you don't need to really verify if the user exists in the database, because by definition, if you have signed the token, that means that we can trust you. And since the access token is only for like 15 minutes, I mean, there's only a little chance that the user has been deleted in 15 minutes or something. So in that case, we just want to return, I just want to return the payload. And that thing will actually be attached to the user object in the request. So under the hood, NestJS is using Express.js. So when I do like that, actually it will be the request in Express.js will be something like that, payload. So later we can get that thing from the request and do something with it through a decorator. I'm going to show how. So right now, let's just do like that, and let's clean that up. Okay, perfect. That's our strategy. It's over. I think it works perfectly. And now I'm going to import the strategy as a provider. Jwt Jwt strategy. And if you are using a refresh token, you will need to actually create another strategy here. But on that, more on that a bit later. And okay, now we can actually do something interesting. We can go here in app.controller and protect that route, saying actually to access that route, to launch that logic, you need to have a Jwt token. So we are using guards, so use guards and auth guard, and we say Jwt. Obviously, if here in the strategy we put Jwt2, then we would need to change it here as well, right? So that's fine here. And let's start the server and try it out. Always need to try it out. Okay, the server has started. That's already a good sign. And let's send it again to get a new Jwt. Now we're going to create another route, which is a get route on the, it's a get route on the root route, right? And let's do it here. New request, it's a get request, protected route. Here we go, and let's put it here. Come on. Okay, in some ways, maybe not that great, but localhost 3333, and that's it. And if we do like that, it say unauthorized, and that error actually comes from the strategy. It fires unauthorized at that level, and let's provide a Jwt. So we go in header, we do authorization bearer, and we provide that token, and let's send that. And here we go, hello world works, right? And if we actually change the token a bit, it will say unauthorized as well. So that kind of proves the proof of concept. Let's go a bit further, so we can add more functionality to that. And just to prove the point, if you change the auth guard here, and if you change it here, that should work as well. Yeah, okay. So I'm not telling bullshit. You might want to go ahead and put that in a class, like in the docs, and create a guard out of it. But I like to keep it that way. At least it's for now it's okay. And however, one thing that you might want to do, I saw some people who were actually getting the user. They were getting the user at that level, right? So let me actually console log that. So console log validate, and let's console log the payload, right? Here we go. And if I fire the request, it will tell me, okay, from the validate I have the sub, email, type, and that thing. So that's good. And some people, they go in the database and they fetch the user at that level already. So I don't really like that. Why? Well, sometimes when you're dealing with databases, you have relations, right? So a user can have a relation with, I don't know, posts or likes or votes, and sometimes you need to get some relationships and sometimes you don't. If you are getting the user here, that means you either need to get it again with more relationships if you just get it without any, or if you are getting the user with all the relationships here, well, you are going to have very heavy queries, because basically every time someone makes a request to your server, you are contacting the database at that level and you getting everything linked to that user, which is not bad, which is not good. So what I usually do is that instead of having some database logic, I just pass that to the route, and I'm actually going to show that this payload is can be found in as a request. So let me import the request from the express thing. Oh, come on. I think it's in common. Right, and let's console log get hello, right? Controller and break.user. Let's do that like that, and the request here. Okay, what happened here? We have the first console log in the validate, and then we have the second console log at that level. So the payload, as I said, is injected into the user variable and kind of saved in the request object of the request. So you have that here. So what I'm doing usually when I want to get the user is that I'm creating a decorator that will get this subfield, and with that decorator I can work with. For instance, I'm going to show you. I'm going to create a utils folder, and I'm going to create get user by ID decorator.ts, and I completely forgot how to create decorators, so let's go and check that in the documentation. Decorator custom route decorators. I hope that I'm going to find it. Okay, that sucks. Custom route decorators, I think that's it. Okay, how do you create one? Okay, here we go. Thank you. Get current user by ID, and we basically just return the user, and that's it. So instead of doing something like that, I can just do get current user by ID, and get current user by ID. It's quite late, guys, so I hope that okay, here we go, it works. And I violated my principle because I want to use param exports. Usually you would have different stuff in the util folder. And here we go, import from utils, and it's going to be user ID, which will be a number, and user ID. Here we go. And now this decorator will give us a user ID directly from the Jwt. So here we go, validate, and whoa, what is happening here? Yeah, of course, I forgot to do sub, and let's do like that in case the user is null. You never know. Here we go, and yeah, that's what I wanted to show. Like, usually I don't get the user from the database in the strategy. I just pass the user ID to the service. So for instance here, right? And then in the service, I would actually go ahead and say user SQL await, I don't know, this user repository. If you're using type param, find one, and then I would do where IT SQL user ID, and I would do that in front of, like, before every logic. You could put that in its own function, but I like to put it just in my service before all the code that I am going to execute. That allows me to customize my queries and make them efficient. So for some queries, I don't need to get some relationships, so I can put less load on the database, and it's also very, very transparent in a way. So that's about it, folks. I think I got it all, and maybe let's put that auth guard in its own kind of guard. So instead of using something like that, we could use and then guards. Usually you would put that in decorators, but at that point let's just leave it like that, and would be Jwt guard.guard.ts, and yeah, it's really getting late. And now I need to create a custom guard, which I don't know how to do by heart. Oh my god, I really have trouble to speak. And custom guard. Oh my god. Guards. Guards here. Okay, authorization guard. Okay, I have it here. And let's put it here. And what it's supposed to do, actually I think I need to go in authorization, no, authentication, not authorization. And I think they have an example of how to put it in the guard. Let's just do it here. Oh, here. Thank you. Oh my god. And it's not local, it's Jwt guard, right? And that's basically just a shorthand to avoid to write that. I mean, it's such a small change. I don't even do that in my application, but you might want to do it, like, it just to replace that by that, and it's basically the same length. So why the heck do we want to replace it? I don't know, but yeah, just wanted to show you that. So basically, I hope that you understood that local passport strategy is a bit dumb, because the whole purpose is that this thing can automate, like this Jwt passport strategy. You can reuse it in a lot of places in your app, but the local passport strategy, you are going to use it only in auth controller, sign in and sign up, and that's it. That's pretty much it. Unless you have an API where you need to provide a password and email every time, which I doubt. Unless you have that, you don't need passport local strategy. You only need passport Jwt strategy. So what we have done in this tutorial, to summarize, is that we have created an auth module, we have created a sign-in route, we have signed our user with the Jwt, and then that Jwt we have decoded it with passport, and we have given you access to that amazing hello world string. Here we go, folks. I hope you liked this tutorial. Don't hesitate to leave a like if you haven't. Authentication is quite a heavy subject to explain. I hope it was clear. And yeah, don't hesitate to share the tutorial, and see you later.